All right, perfect. Then thank you very much, Francesca and Reinier, for tuning into my podcast episode, Podcast Discuss. You both are the presidents or co-presidents of Volt Europe. Volt is a European political movement and party. It exists in most European member states. And Volt is a very new European party. Maybe in the beginning, you can kind of explain what actually brought you to Volt, why did you go there, and why did you want to start being a politician for this party, and how did you end up in this position which you are right now? Whoever wants to
Well,
start
yeah,
first.
yeah. Thanks for having us. I see Reinier points at me, so I'm guessing this means I'm talking first. And it's good to be here with you today. Thank you very much for inviting us. It's always fun to talk about politics. That's what we do, right? So yeah, interesting question. Like me personally, I've always been interested in politics, but more as in like, you know, reading the news or listening or debating with my friends, but never really active. Then at a certain point, around 2017, 2018, a lot of things started happening, right? I mean, Brexit happened, Trump gets elected, Bolsonaro gets elected, a lot of turmoil crosses Europe. But to me, honestly, the reason that triggered me was elections in my country. So I'm Italian, as you can easily understand by my name. And yeah, in 2018, a new government was formed with a far-right party and a populist party. And so, you know, I was putting a lot of hopes in what were the progressive parties at the time, but I saw that they were really doing anything. So this government that was formed was obsessed with migrants, basically. And honestly, I saw the other part playing along and not really counteracting that. So for me, it was the moment where I decided, okay, nobody's doing anything, so it needs to be me to stand up. And so I was actually looking into another party. That's the funny story that I always say. And then I think Facebook targeted me and presented me Volt. So I started looking in what it was. And then I went to a meeting in my town. At the time, I was living in Florence. And in the minute I met the people there, I knew it was my political home, that I had found my political home.
Okay. Yeah, sure. That's interesting. Reinier, if you want to continue and maybe explain why you came to Volt and what was your motivation in general?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us, Jan-Philip. My name is Reinier van Lanschot. I'm 32 years old and I'm from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I studied law, and after my studies did a commercial job at a retail company. And at the time, in the first 5 years of my working life, I saw a lot of things that were concerning. Primarily the inability of our global society to address climate change properly, but also the inability of treating migrants in a humane way. And these were just two examples of things that I found highly concerning. I was expecting, because these challenges and these issues were transcending borders, that our politicians would also look for solutions that transcend borders. That seemed very obvious to me. Also because so many companies work across borders, so many people live and think across borders already. So I was expecting to see more international collaboration. But the opposite was true. I saw Brexit, Trump, in my own country for democracy, Alternative for Deutschland in Germany becoming very big. And I could name each European country and give you on earth, this is exactly, how is this possible? This is exactly the direction we should not be going into. And I see very little action. So I was complaining about that because my concern led me to complain. And then I met these young people that started Volt, who basically told me, if you're upset about the fact that nobody's doing, or that somebody should do something about this, then we are here to tell you that you are somebody too. So you can try and do something about this as well. That struck a chord. And when I first heard the idea of a pan-European political movement, it seems so logical to me. It's one of the things I thought was, why have I never thought of this? It's so logical that since our entire societies are already more and more integrated in Europe, that politics should follow as well. So I decided to invest a couple of hours per week in supporting Volt. I love the idea. I wanted to do something. However, there was no money, no experience, no famous people. So I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be a challenge, but I like a challenge. So let's try and help out. And one thing led to another. I co-founded the Dutch chapter of Volt. And after a year, we decided the only way we can really make this a success is if we quit our jobs, at least two of us, Laurens Dasse and myself, to dedicate our full time, our lives to this. And we had savings both had savings for roughly a year, and we decided to go for it. This monologue is becoming too long, so maybe I should stop. I should stop here. But now, 4 years later, I'm one of the two co-presidents of Volt Europa, and the other one, of course, is Francesca, who's here with us.
I think it's interesting that you say that, because you said that you had savings for a year, and so you said, okay, that's okay. I'm gonna start out as a politician and see where it goes. Maybe that's also something that people would be interested in, this financial question of how long, or is it possible to be a politician at the same time, not being sure, okay, am I going to stay a politician for the long time, for the long term? Am I going to make money in the long term? So what was the question of risk for you, maybe for you both, at that point that you said, okay, I'm going to do it, because many young people maybe would like to do it as well, but then they say, okay, the financial question is still also really important to me, so I'm not sure whether I would be, I would risk it. So that's the question.
It's really a case-by-case basis. So for me, I didn't have a house, I didn't have a girlfriend, I didn't have a car, so I had very few things and responsibilities outside of taking care of myself, and I had a job that paid very well the years before. So I had the opportunity to save and was relying enough on the fact that this would be a learning opportunity for me, that I thought, okay, I'm willing to take that risk, mainly because I find it incredibly important. I believe the world will become, or Europe will become, a better place if Volt is successful. But also I find it fun, and I think it will teach me a lot to have this experience. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I have never met anybody who's in politics or in Volt, at least, who's in politics for the money, because that's not, if you find that the most important factor in your career, then don't go into politics. But I would say it's really a case-by-case basis. And at an early stage, if you're young, prioritizing the highest learning curve is something I would always recommend. And for me, I thought this is something that's interesting. I meet a lot of different people. I learn a lot of different things. It also is very entrepreneurial, because you're trying to build up an organization. So that's sort of the risk assessment in short.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for Francesca, probably the similar, or how would you say?
Similar. If I can build on what Reinier just said, I think I think for me there's also like really a political point in this. I think you said something that is very correct. Like, maybe young people think, okay, but then how am I going to support myself? And that's very important. And this is something that we discuss pretty often, I'd say, between Reinier and I, or in general in the organization. So the aim of us as co-president, one of the aim of us as co-president, but in general, one of the things that Volt wants to do is really to make politics accessible, let's say, to people, so that generally if you can invest time without being paid, it means that you probably come from a background that allows you to do that. So either, I don't know, you come from a wealthy family or whatever that is. And that is not bad per se, but what we are envisioning in terms of vision for the future is to enable people to be able to do that, even if they don't come from a privileged background. So there's also, let's say, a political point to me in this. And when you look, this is also one of the reasons why I second the sentiment of Reinier. It makes a lot of sense to have collaboration across borders. When you look, for example, at how parties are financed, it looks very different across the member states of the European Union, according to how much importance, let's say, they give to party politics. So you would see, for example, in my country, in Italy, public financing is basically not possible. And that's reflected from a sentiment of feeling that politics is somehow something dirty, something that you should not get involved with. But that creates a vicious circle, because if there's no money for the parties, it means people who don't have money cannot really be there. You know what I mean? Whereas in other countries, Germany is a very good example. Germany has a very good public funding system, at least compared to our member states, that facilitate people with different backgrounds to be active.
Okay. So what you're saying is, so the public should support more opportunities for young people to start political careers, to have like maybe early financial support for young people.
For example,
like
yes.
Scholarships, for example, or.
For example, yes. I think this is very important that it's done by the public sector, because this is how our democracies are nurtured. You know, like party politics is not how you get elected, but what vision you have for society, what kind of ideas battle you're fighting. So yes, I think it would be very important. We as an organization try to do that for our internal structure, but of course it goes to another, let's say, another channel. It's another story then.
Okay, no, that's super interesting. I'm not sure whether I think I'm gonna have to jump to the next question, because otherwise we don't have enough time. Because I think what's also super important is because Volt is a political movement that tries to reunite Europe in a better way, probably. Maybe you could say it like that, so that Europe gets stronger and gets more united. So when people read about the party, it says Volt wants the European United Republic, more or less. Do you agree with like this term, or do you have problems with people saying, okay, we would like to have, for example, the United States of Europe, for example? Because I heard that these were certain areas of conflict where people weren't sure on what terms to decide. Or is it actually important to you, or do you think that's not super important to define a certain wording?
Words are important, okay. Definitely. And what's interesting is what I've learned over the past 5 years in working in a very European context, is that words can mean different things for people that come from different countries. An example, in Bulgaria, the Communist Party called themselves the Progressive Party. So we are, in Dutch terms, I'm from the Netherlands, a progressive party. We support all these, what I call progressive ideals about the right to love who you want to love, be who you want to be, the right to decide on your own body, on your own life, these kind of things. But if in Bulgaria we promote ourselves as a progressive party, everybody thinks we're communists. So that's why sometimes the wording has to change per country to be able to bring the message across that you actually want to bring across. What never changes, though, is the substance, the policies that lie underneath those words. So I often refer to it as a European parliamentary democracy. That's what we strive for. In some countries, United States of Europe might sound better, but in other countries, it may bring up too much associations with the United States, which has a higher amount of systemic racism, which has higher social inequality. And those things is not something that we aspire to create inside Europe. So I would say the substance of what we're trying to create, that's the most important thing. And that is having one European parliament with more, which resembles a parliamentary democracy, with a government that they can send away if it doesn't work properly, with true European political parties, and a European parliament that reflects not national interests but European interests, so that you as a German can vote for somebody in Portugal if you like that person and support their vision. So more important than calling it a United States of Europe, a European Republic, or a European democracy, is what exactly you mean when you say those things.
Okay. And Francesca, you would say that's because if you look at the Netherlands and Italy, for example, so they're both democracies, obviously, but I would argue that the parliamentary systems are somewhat different, though. So for an Italian, like a European republic would look maybe a little bit different than for a Dutch person. So how could you kind of like find a better system to for the people to understand that Europe is a European state? Or because isn't this, maybe this is also important for people that listening to the podcast, what does Volt want? Do they want a European state? Is that like the real goal? And is it a short-term goal, or is it how would you answer that question?
That's a very broad question, but you said something at the beginning that I think it's important to underline. So, because to me, this is one of the things that really we should try to do right in the European Union, and that we try to do every day in Volt. And that is, it is true. Reinier is Dutch, I'm Italian, and we will, like, that will never change, right? Like, this is who we are. But at the same time, what is the way the European Union works at the moment is that me representing Italy, I go there with my system, with my rule, with my idea, with everything already set up in stone. And I meet the Netherlands, for example, and everything is already pre-done. And then we have to find a way to work together. Look at how the European Parliament is composed, right? Everybody elects their representative in their own way. There's an example that I love. I always make this example, and it's fun because it's with the Netherlands, actually. So in this example, I am 25. I'm not 25, actually, but imagine I'm 25. And I want to run for the European elections. So I can run in Italy because I have reached that age that, according to the law, allows me to run. Reinier, back in the Netherlands, he's 13, but he can still run for the European Parliament because the law in the Netherlands says you can run, but you have to turn 18 during your mandate, okay? And in the end, so we have been elected at different age, with different background, with a different system, in different seats, with everything, like it's a whole different structure, but in the end, we end up in the same parliament. How can this be a democratic system? You know, the barriers to enter, for example, in Italy, you have a 4% threshold. In the Netherlands, I don't remember what that is, but that's like, there's no threshold maybe, or something. So what we aspire to do, like, words are important, the system is important, but in the end, what we aspire to do is to make the system more democratic. And what I want to go back to what I said at the beginning, I think you touched a very interesting point. The idea is to build this shared solution, this idea of a united European Union from the beginning together. So what happens now is that everything is pre-done and you try to make it work. What we want to do is, okay, let's look at this from the beginning together. And a concrete example is exactly the one on the European Parliament, because at the moment there is proposal for an electoral reform being discussed in the European Parliament, brought up by our MP. So this, I cannot tell you like what exact form of European Union we want to see, but one thing is for sure, collaborating in this system where we put our brains together before will mean that the shared solution works for everybody, and that we can take the best practices from all the players that are, all the citizens that are involved in this.
Okay. And so to improve the system to a point where it's really a democratic, truly democratic system that the people understand and support, How do you guys see for example, on a European level, a European president, the European Parliament that gets stronger, a European, for example, that the Parliament has the right for budget on the European level, because right now it doesn't really have the right to do that. So there are many questions. So maybe to go there, what would be the first thing that you would change if you could change something right now about the European Union? What would be like the first thing?
Unanimous decision making in the European Council.
Okay.
That would be my one thing. The European Council is where all the heads of states meet, and they are there to come up with decisions, but mainly look at their own national interests instead of European interests. And they are unanimously making decisions, which enables the country that is standing on the brake to determine the speed. So right now we see the war in Ukraine, and luckily we have unity in imposing sanctions. However, if Hungary, that has just had elections, Orban is re-elected, now starts saying we will not participate in these sanctions, we veto this, then the entire ability to swiftly respond to one of the biggest crises in at least my lifetime will be significantly lower. And this is one example, but there are thousands of examples where unanimous decision-making in the European Council prevents us as a European society to make swift action to fix the challenges that we are faced with. So that hands down would be my first thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And for Francesca, what will be?
Yeah, once this is done, we can talk about a common fiscal policy. I think that would be crucial. And I'm like, it's a bit trivial that the first thing that comes into my mind is money, but I think that would be very important. So the example Reinier made, I think, suits this occasion. So now we're imposing sanctions on Russia because of the war in Ukraine. One thing that we are not doing is, one thing that, for example, Germany is not doing, I'm saying this because Germany is where I live, I'm Italian, but I'm based in Berlin, is banning the import of energy from Russia. And this is because, it's hard, it's complex, and what is going to happen with, then it's like we have 50% energy input from Russia. Now, a common fiscal policy, a common budget, common debt would allow to make decisions like this less painful. There are actually, at the moment, analysis not made by me, but made by very relevant experts that say that this is already feasible for Germany if the European solidarity system works properly. Imagine if this was not even a question, we would not be debating on if or not we should cut down what is currently financing the war. We could have done this before. It would have been much easier. It would have been much effective, because you don't do it after, there's a genocide happening in Ukraine at the moment. You do it right before the things started. So it would make everything much, the power of action of the European Union would become much, much, much better. And this has been seen also during the COVID crisis, when you think about it, both to counteract the economic crisis, but also for vaccine purchase. Like there's countless benefits of putting together our money and having a more fair system, for example, that doesn't allow fiscal paradises in the European Union. Because when you have that power, we were talking before about the power of action that money give you. This is also valid for the EU. When you have that power, you can really enact your decisions.
Mm-hmm. So, but the question of gas is very crucial, I think. Because I think we have a thing here. It's because in Germany we have this issue that when you don't import gas from Russia anymore, then you will have dramatic problems with the industry. How's your perspective from that? Because you live in Berlin, Reinier, you live in the Netherlands. How do you guys view that? Because we as Germans don't really see that as a European debate, more as a German debate right now. Do you see that very negatively, or do you also understand it a little bit?
I think it should be a European debate and not just a national debate. For example, the Netherlands has a huge gas field in a northern province called Groningen. We stopped pumping up gas there because there were earthquakes that broke down houses of people living there. And I think it was the right decision to stop pumping up gas. But now with the war in Ukraine going on, it may be an opportunity to start pumping up that gas again and making sure that everybody whose house is affected is more than compensated for that. And that way it could partially fulfill the needs that other countries have. Or what our European parliamentary member has proposed is to create a unity fund within the EU, which is similar to the Recovery and Resilience Fund. And this might become a bit technical, so let me explain it. The Recovery and Resilience Fund is the fund that was made within Europe during the COVID crisis to make sure that the EU would give subsidies to countries that are hit hardest by the COVID crisis. A similar fund could be made to support the countries that are hit hardest and whose economies are hit hardest by stopping the import of Russian gas and Russian oil. So I think we will benefit as an entire European population of 450 million people if we approach this debate about how do we diminish the gas and oil dependency from Russia in a way that's European, because it will just create better solutions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there has to be European cooperation. There has to be a European organization that transfers it. But the question now is, if Germany decides to not import gas from Russia right now, then you would have massive problems and damage to the industry. For example, the chemical industry, which is in southern Germany, is really dependent, and I think it consumes 20% of the entire gas imports from Russia into Germany is consumed by the chemical industry. So there is this question of how is that really feasible, and is it more or less also a debate that can have catastrophic consequences if you would really do that, because that is the reason why the German government right now doesn't do it, because they say it's just it would be crazy to do it. It's not that they don't want to, it's not that they wouldn't like to sanction Russia, but it damages.
Yeah, I'm also following that debate. I mean, it's interesting to see that very smart economists in Germany actually say that the impact on the industry will be severe, but that or significant, but that it can be dealt with. Whereas the Bundeskanzler says that they are mistaken and that it's not. And I don't claim to know better than them. What I do know is that we need to do everything we can to diminish gas dependency as soon as possible. And maybe that might not be blocking everything now or phasing it out, but we really need to make sure that we do that as quickly as possible, because we are now literally sponsoring the bombing of Ukrainian cities and the killing of Ukrainian civilians. And I know that, of course, as the people in power have a duty to think of all the interests and also of the people that might be affected by these types of rash decisions in Germany and other European countries. But I would urge everybody to do it as quickly as possible.
Okay, and Francesca, would you have the same take on that, or is it how do you see that debate kind of?
I of course, like this all makes sense. I think that political will can make things happen, and that we have or can build systems of support. Imagine, I mean, that I was reading this morning a parallel between what happened in Greece during the great financial crisis and what is happening now with this thing about Germany. So we have failed to diversify our energy imports. We have failed to convert to a green economy. And now we're facing the consequences. And the parallel with the Greece situation during the great financial crisis was there. In that case, very badly managed, so we don't want to go there again. But in that case, also, European solidarity had played a role. So I think that with political will, we can make this really happen. I mean, not tomorrow, maybe, but as we discuss, there's not only people dying in Ukraine. I mean, you can argue that is not, I don't know, for somebody, maybe that doesn't matter, but it's a real threat to the whole European Union being so dependent on an autocracy that has already proved to be very aggressive towards a country that is just, it's basically in our backyard. So do we really want to risk that?
I just want to ask a question because the German foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, today said, if we, and that was her explanation to that, she said, if we stop importing gas from Russia today, the bombing in Ukraine won't stop tomorrow. That's what she said. I'm not trying to counter argue your arguments here. I'm just saying that's her argument.
It's true, but it might stop in 3 or 6 months from now. And if you just continue to import this gas, then probably in 3 to 6 months it'll be the same situation that we're in. So of course it will not. It's not like flipping a switch, but it will definitely have impact.
So
I'm sorry for interrupting you, by the way.
No. I'm trying to say, or this is like my argument. What I think is also very interesting and important is that how can you win a war? And a war you can win much better by actually delivering weapons to the country that needs them. I'm not convinced that this question of like cutting energy from Russia will really have a direct impact on the war itself. This is like what I think. I'm not an expert, and I don't know if that's true, but this is my feeling that that wars are won by weapons, not through financial movements over there because of energy resources. This is what I think, but I don't know what you guys, how you feel that.
Can I add something to that? Yeah, so you touched upon something interesting, and that is the difference between the sanctions that we're doing at the moment towards Russia and this specific. So this specific ban of energy imports would, because of how the Russian system is built, impact directly on the Kremlin, whereas the other sanctions that, of course, I support, but the other sanction, the ugly truth that we all will need to face one day is that they're also targeting people, that like regular Russians are going to pay us a high price, people who didn't want this war, who maybe don't even know that what is happening because of the propaganda machine. So, this feeling that whether or not the financial weapon is more or less important than the regular weapon, well, that's a feeling. I think we need to then define what is the end game, right? If the end game is the annihilation of the person who is aggressing you, then I agree with you, the weapon is the way to go. But if the end game is bringing peace and bringing people back at the table of talking to each other, then financial sanctions can be very important. And this specific one would target directly the people who are doing this and President Putin.
Okay. I think now is a good question to ask. How do you guys actually see the development of, for example, a military union within the European Union?
Well, we thought that was something to go for 5 years ago when Volt was founded. We recently celebrated our 5th birthday. And actually from the very start, we've always advocated for a European army. It starts with the simple question of, do you think you should be able to defend yourself? Well, yes. A lot of countries, especially the smaller ones, will never be able to do that by themselves. And I think recent events show that without structural and way further integrated European defense collaboration, we do not really have any power on a global level. And we are economically a giant. Politically, we are in puberty as the EU, but military, we are still an infant. And I think you see that reflected in the aggression on our borders. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Also because the different systems we use now make it impossible to cooperate within different military, within the military of different countries. But also, if you look at the amount of money we spend, we sometimes even have competition between other European countries, which drives up the prices of military equipment. I mean, that's so illogical. And so these are just some examples why I think it's absolutely necessary. It should happen. It should have happened yesterday, but now that everybody has a huge wake-up call, I hope that we can finally go there more quickly. However, one important thing, it needs to be accompanied by democratic control, and therefore the creation of the European army needs to be paralleled by further European integration, because that's the only way to make sure that when this European army is sent somewhere and is actively pursuing things, that we have the right democratic control, and that's super important.
Okay, to and also to have the same equipment, because that's maybe a question that, or a problem that is often described, is that the European army is often said to technically not functioning because there's so many different weapon systems in each country, that even I heard that like refilling like a truck or a tank, for example, is for the different armies in Belgium, Germany, Netherlands not possible, because they have different tools for that and different opening things for the tank and stuff like that. So very basic, simple things that make it quite hard actually to realize that. So the infrastructure question is a big one, I think, also, right?
Definitely, it's a big part of it. And I also heard a Dutch general once say that it takes 30 years to build a full defense force. So with the question about a European army, what you should be asking yourself is, okay, do I see the need for it somewhere in the coming 30 years? And the answer used to always be yes. Now people tend to see the immediate need as well due to the horrific things happening in Ukraine. But I'm talking too much. Maybe Francesca, do you want to add something?
No, I think we've covered this extensively. Jan-Philipp, unless you want me to really say something, but it's, the question of governance is the most important to me, like how the governance of this united European army would work. But for the rest, I don't think I have much to add.
Because another question I would have now in just regards to Ukraine, and I'm jumping a bit, but this was something that I'm interested in what you guys think is when Putin started the war and when Russia attacked Ukraine, did you think that it was going to happen? Did you think that it was a realistic scenario? You personally, were you before the troops were actually entering the country, before they were actually like on the borders, hundreds of thousands of soldiers? Did you personally think that he would do it? Did you personally think that he was able to do it and that he was willing to do it, and that Russia is in fact an aggressive country now that attacks other sovereign countries in Europe? Did you think it was possible?
So to be super honest, the days leading up to the invasion, I was reading the news, and I was seeing all this US intelligence saying, oh yeah, they're doing a false flag. Maybe the attack happens on Wednesday. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Like this is, paranoid. And this is, I was also thinking like, maybe it's some kind, of, I don't know, mind game played by the US to scare us or something. Well, not us, but so no, honestly, no. I thought it was really way less possible that Russia would invade. It is true that, I mean, in 2014, they did took Crimea. But I mean, we didn't saw a war like this displayed, right? So no, to me, I personally thought that the very good, actually, American intelligence that was happening was really, being a bit paranoid. That's how I was describing at the time. And it's a bit bitter now to think about it. And that's, the war, like a war like this was something belonging to the past. I must admit, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe I was naive, or maybe this is a shared sentiment, but I thought it was something for the past century. And now we don't really, do this kind of things. When it did happen, it was very shocking, because it still looks, even a day, like an action, I don't know, for 1940, not for 2022 European Union. So it's very weird. It is true that wars happen all the time around the world, and we just, overlook this because it's not in our backyard. But no, I thought it was gonna be something more played in the field of, discussions between the states and diplomacy than an actual war. It is true that now Russia, with this move, is an international pariah. So what happens in the future needs to be seen. Like, when this war is going to end, hopefully not too long from now. Anyway, there's the relationship we have with Russia is forever changed. It can never go back. Once that that your neighbor is someone capable of literally invading you again, as if it was the last century.
Yeah, definitely. And so, Reinier, maybe you would have the same perspective, or did you also think that it was realistic that this could happen, or?
There was a point in time where I thought I could predict what kind of events would happen, but it turns out that I am not good at predicting. So I was not predicting this at all, because it's an illogical move to me. There were about 200,000 Russian troops at the border, and a country the size of Ukraine, so I've been told by experts, is impossible to fully invade and conquer with a mere 200,000 soldiers, because even Russian soldiers need to sleep, and about 1/3 is always busy with logistics. So you have to divide it by 3. That's the active troops that you have at each given time, and 70,000 for a country that is massive is way too little. So I was expecting aggression in the Donbas region, but not a full-blown invasion, because it would seem as something that was against our own interests. So that's why I wasn't expecting this at all. What about you?
Well, I mean, personally, I don't know. I'm not sure whether I was actually thinking of anything there, but I think that Russia is really, really an aggressive country. And the question now that people are asking is, okay, how far are they going to go? Because they don't have the capabilities, as you said, to move across the country in Ukraine, to take the entire country. They don't have enough soldiers. Will they be able to, or will they risk to enter other countries? For example, Republic of Moldavia, for example, the NATO borders, so Estonia, Lithuania, would they be willing to touch these borders? Is that a scenario that is, in your perspective, like realistic, or is it something that the media is just using right now to kind of push the entire topic, the subject? Maybe, I don't know, whoever wants to start.
That's the $100 million question. So
yeah, first of all, it's really hard, and as I said, I overestimated my prediction abilities when I was younger. I stopped doing that, so don't pin me down on this. But I think in Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, those are EU countries, those are NATO countries, but even the EU has a stronger defense tie than NATO has. So if you invade an EU country, then that is full-blown war with the entire European Union. And with that, also with the entirety of NATO, which includes the United States, which has the largest army in the world. So that seems like a move that I find unlikely. Moldova, on the other hand, that I think is a more realistic scenario. But again, I was not expecting a full-blown invasion in Ukraine either. So don't pay me down. And
yeah, and that's what people are wondering, like in Poland right now. That's why Polish people are so nervous, because they say, okay, no one ever thought that he would do it and he would invade Ukraine, but he did.
But if I can add on this, I think nobody knows, not even the people in the Kremlin, not even Putin. If you look at how, would you ever expect it that Russia had an army that could be resisted by Ukraine so much? There's horrible thing happening on the ground, but everybody was expecting that Kiev would have been taken in like 2 days, and Kiev is still, fighting. So I think it's going to depend on how this conflict goes and how the Russian army reorganizes itself. At the moment, what we see is that is not in great shape, honestly. They're winning, but it's, again, Russia against Ukraine, but it's not displaying a fantastic shape. Invading a NATO country or a European Union country, that's a huge bet, that I think you want to take if you think that somehow you can win. We, again, as I said before, we did let them or him invading Crimea some years ago. So maybe they thought this would have played out differently. So I don't think anybody knows, but I would think that it would be a whole other level of risk-taking.
Okay, I understand. I would have another question for you guys, because it's like sometimes I ask recently other people also. What do you think about Putin's? You can call it dictatorship, because he is somewhat a dictator. He's not he's not elected by, the majority of his country probably. Many elections were manipulated. How do you think? How long will he stay in office still? That's like the question that many people ask right now. And if he leaves office, what is that going to do to Russia? Is it going to change? Is it going to change its culture, its democratic culture? Is it going to be a more democratic, prosperous country, or is it going to stay a dictatorship or an autocratic country?
So look, let me give you my thoughts on this. Although I want to flag that I'm not an expert on Russia, I think a lot will depend on how this war plays out. What I think everybody would want now, except probably from people in Ukraine, and rightfully so, is diplomatic resolution of this conflict. If that happens, yes, I could see Putin staying in power. But if Russia really loses, then it's another story. I think that there is, but again, this is like I'm not an expert, but I think we saw that there was a very good display from the Russian society, civil society, those at least the younger, those who have access to the internet and to a different media than state TV, so they're possibly are not brainwashed and that know what is going on, of resisting the regime of Putin, so protesting, speaking up in spite of the high consequences that they face. So I think there is a good field there where democracy could raise, but if Putin gets overthrown, there's for sure, like we saw this in history, there's going to be a bit of period of turmoil, and you never know how these things happen. So even a year, the prediction is hard to do, but a lot would depend on the resolution of this conflict, in my view.
Okay. Maybe Reinier, what do you think? Do you think he will stay in office, or?
Again, hard to predict. I think Assad is still in in power in Syria. There's many examples of dictators that did horrible things that managed to stay in power for a long time. Of course, as someone who firmly believes that democracy is the best way to structure a country, I hope that Russia at some point will become more democratic, but the path to get there, I find difficult to see. But what I do know is that we inside the EU and living inside democratic countries and inside a democratic continent should do everything we can to give the best example of how democracies can work, because you also see democratic backsliding in European countries, and it's kind of snowed under by the events of the last months. But this is something that I find incredibly important. If we want to see more democracies globally, then the best thing we can do is give an example of how well democracy can work. So I call for everybody that's listening to this podcast to become active in politics and put time and energy in improving your democracy. Everybody is welcome involved, of course, but more than that, it's important to stand up for what you believe in and be part of the democratic process in your country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I think that's also a very good ending already to the session that also took about like almost 1 hour. Thank you very much for finding time for discussing these topics. If you would like to say something in the end, maybe about yourself, about Volt, about upcoming elections, you may do now, or address people if you would like to.
I think Reinier did a fantastic conclusion. Actually, I think we should maybe repeat a bit that. So I failed to introduce myself at the beginning. So I will do it now, right? So my name is Francesca Romana D'Antuono. That's I know Germans don't love 3 names, but I have 3 names. I'm Italian. I live in Berlin. 34. I have a very young 7-month-old son who is Italian, Albanian, and lives and has been born in East Berlin. So this is our future. This is what the future looks like. Why do we want it? Why do we want to spoil it? Why would we want to have to deal with a climate catastrophe? Why do we want to having to deal with the war? Why do we want to having to deal with racism and inequalities and migrants being treated as they were not human beings? Another reality is possible. And I second very much the sentiment of my co-president in saying, you have the power, you can stand up and work every day to build your democracy better. It doesn't matter where you do this, but it's the beauty of the battle of ideas is that you can shape reality around you. And that's an amazing power that once you start, you will never give up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And Reinier, maybe you have also something towards the end.
No, this was beautiful and powerful. Thank you, Francesca. I have nothing to add.
Okay, so thank you very much. And I'll listen to you guys, or I will hear you guys probably maybe sometime soon. Maybe we can do it again. And the next episode will be coming up soon, also with another parliamentary from Germany. So you can still tune in.